Hello, I'm happy you're here. I'm so excited to be talking about all of the books that I read last month. I ended up reading 9 books, and I even managed to find a 5-star read for me, even though I had a little bit of a reading slump at the start of the month. So I'm so excited to get into and tell you about the books I read this month. I feel like I need to explain like my rating scale a little bit. One is I'm so mad at myself for having read all of it. A 2 is like a, I saw what you were trying to do, but it just did not hit for me. 3 is like a mid, like I enjoyed it, it was good. If you had brought it up in conversation, I would say, yeah, you should definitely give that a read. A 4 is I liked this book. I had so much fun reading it. I want you to read it. I think that if you are interested in the same types of books as me, that you would enjoy it. And then a 5 is I absolutely adore this book. I would read it again. And I just had the best time in so many different ways reading this book. So keep that in mind as I kind of tell you my star ratings, and also my ratings are based on my experience while reading the book, not necessarily how well the book is written. I could absolutely love a book and it could just be not the highest quality of writing, but I had a great time reading it. So it might get a higher rating from me opposed to someone who just can't get through a book like that. Keep that in mind, and I'll also tell you a little bit about how the reading slump really affected some of my scores for this month. Also, to give you an idea in case that you are new, I read mainly fiction books. I like a good fantasy book. This month, a little more than half of the books I read were between 300 and 500 pages, and all of the physical copy books that I read this month came from the library. And if you don't have a library card, I really think that you should look into your local library and consider getting a library card. They are such a good resource, and they do more than books. They do way more than books. I consumed 3 audiobooks this month, and they were all in the romance category. The first one I read was People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I had read Funny Story by Emily Henry last month, and I just had such a fun time with her writing and such a fun time with Julia Wayland's narration that I was like, okay, I'm gonna be in my Emily Henry era for a little while here. I think we're gonna see a lot of Emily Henry this year. However, the trope in this one just wasn't really for me, and I didn't feel any like real connection to these characters. I love the idea of like this travel situation that they have going on, where it's like a ritual to travel somewhere every summer, no matter the budget, but I just didn't feel super connected to the characters and was not like seeing that like connection bit between them either. I was just like, sure. But I still just vibe with her writing so much that I did stay up until 2 a.m. to finish listening to this audiobook. The story itself did not vibe super well, but the Emily Henry, Julia Wayland of it all really spoke to me. So I still ended up giving this like a 3.5 experience. If you're already into Emily Henry, I wouldn't say skip this book. Like, I think it's fine, just the trope itself just wasn't really for me. So a little bit later on in the month, I also read Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Again, it was through audio, and I had a much better experience with Book Lovers than I did with People We Meet on Vacation, but it still didn't quite hit where Funny Story had hit for me. So it like lands somewhere in between those two. I really love the familial dynamic that was going on and the self-awareness it had about like romance tropes and just book tropes in general, because the main character is a book publicist. I was totally paying attention. And then the love interest is an editor. So like books are very much woven into the dynamic, even the dynamic between her and her sister, like they had lived above a bookshop. This book I feel like was very self-aware in that way, and it brought it up a few times. Some of the coincidences that led them to where they ended up was like, sure, why not? Which is also like fun. Like, I don't think it takes itself too seriously, but I do think that they're good. I think that they're so much fun. Emily Henry has this really amazing way of writing just cool, casual, and clear characters without being too on the nose, explaining to you, the reader, like what's going on, what the situation is, and how these characters are, which the next book did not. But Book Lovers, I gave that a 4 5-star experience. I had such a good time. If anyone was looking for romance books and for some reason didn't know about Emily Henry, because not all of us live on the internet, I would say this one's for you. The final book I listened to on audio, again also a romance, but now we're getting into like more witchy territory, was The Kiss Curse by Erin Sterling. This is the second book in the X-Hex trilogy, and I read X-Hex last October in print. It's back here on my bookshelf. I thought that the writing for that was also a little on the nose, but I could get over it, and I felt like the writing is just like, that's just whatever. It's just a lot of, I don't know how to describe it. It's like trying too hard to be cool, like the pick-me of books, honestly. And then I just did not vibe with the narrator at all. It made that like, I'm trying to be so cool over here, worse. It made it just almost unbearable, honestly. I feel so bad saying that. It just did not vibe with me. There's such a good little story in here, and the thing is, the writing is not different from the print to the audiobook. Like, it was the same. I knew what I was getting myself into, but I think the narrator is what really brought it down for me, because I'm giving this book like a 2.5 experience, and I gave the X-Hex a 3.5 experience. So when I do the next book, because there's a third book, the story's cute enough, I'd like to finish it, I will for sure do it in print. Something, I feel like I'm just like, I don't want to drag this book too hard. I don't want to drag this book too hard, but I did not have fun. And I had fun with the first one, which was like such a letdown, I guess. But these books, including that one, does this thing in romance books that I just can't stand. It doesn't do anything to lead up to the descriptive, intimate scenes that it has 2/3 of the way through the book. Like, it feels very weird that those scenes just come up and all of a sudden it's very descriptive. There was no lead up to it. That's the issue. Like, I should already know that this is where it's going. And I still knew where it was going, but I had nothing. I had nothing to lead up to it. If you're going to save your intimate, described scenes for 2/3 of the way through, I think that's fine, but there has to be some description, a little bit allude word here or there in the beginning part of the book, so that way when that happens and you're just throwing the word cock around, like, just, we're ready. We're more ready for it. Yeah, again, this was a 2.5 star experience for me. I will be reading the third book in print. So while we're on the topic of 2-star experiences, I read a spicy little novella in an afternoon, which admittedly did get me out of the reading slump I was feeling the beginning of the month. And I finished this novella and I was like, I'm ready to tackle my TBR. I'm ready to read. The book was The Wheel of Fate by Mia Elliott, and it was a 2.5 experience for me at best. But I read it on Kindle Unlimited, so I read it on my little Kindle. It was like 97 pages long. Again, it took me like a little bit of my afternoon and I just drove straight through it. And it's a novella. Like, there's not going to be a lot of descriptions. And it just wasn't enough time to really flesh out the magical shifter romance that I think she wanted to portray. Obviously, if there was more time, the story could actually get fleshed out. But the dialogue in this book made my skin crawl. So I don't know that an extra 100 pages was really going to help with that part. So maybe it's better to like use your imagination to fill in the gaps, because the dialogue. So these are the 2-star books. This is why I would feel this way. I feel like I'm like shitting on these books, but those are my 2-star reads, and you know, speaking of short books that I read on Kindle Unlimited, I read Dopamine Detox, a short guide to remove distractions and get your brain to do hard things by I should have looked this up. Overlay with the correct pronunciation. Thibaut Maurice. Great, okay. I don't know that I like learned extra new things that are helpful from this book. So I deleted all of my scrolling apps off of my phone last month, so I am trying to do like this, regulate or use my dopamine a little bit better, because I like will do things at the start of the day and then I have no motivation to do the rest of my stuff at the end of the day. So I was more or less reading this in a day to just confirm what I was already feeling and make sure that there wasn't anything extra I could do. It basically just said to do what I've done. So I gave this a 3. It didn't tell me more than what I expected. It was more or less, yeah, that seems accurate. That sounds fine. It doesn't sound harmful. It doesn't sound like it's asking to do too many things, other than like when it says don't hang out with your friends because they might be a distraction. Like, ugh, I don't know about that. And then there was a lot of like trying to get you to read his other books. If this has to do with the topic, just put it into this book. One book to rule them all. It was mid. That's a 3. That's a 3-star experience. It was what it was. It was neutral to me. I read a couple more books on my Kindle, and I'm always looking for more titles on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have any suggestions, just please drop them down below. I love adding things to my TBR. It's an addiction at this point. So for my little Kindle, I have read the 5th installment of the Myrtlewood Crones series by Iris Beaglehole. The 5th book is the Crone of Arcane Cinders. So we got to read the 5th book. There is such a special place in my heart for the Myrtlewood world and Iris Beaglehole. These books are really what got me back into reading after having 2 kids. So there's just such like a special place in my heart for these books. The writing is very on the nose, but it's just so cozy, and I can look past it. I can look past the very plain language of being like, well, I guess I did know something was going on. I know, I should have told you so. And I don't care. I had such a good time. I gave this a 3.75. Again, I absolutely love these books. They are so just cozy. I'm not scared that anyone's gonna die in this fantasy witch world, and it's just so much fun. I adore them. This is like older witches going through magical puberty, having to fight off different magical organizations while they are on their quest to find dragons. I love them so much. I got an ARC off of NetGalley, which then I read on my Kindle. The whole process of getting it from NetGalley onto my Kindle was super easy, but then I felt so much pressure to read this book and to write a concise review of it that I think I stressed myself out. And this experience, not the book itself, but that experience of assigning myself homework, I think is what really put me in a reading slump, in a combination with probably other things, probably not just this. So that really is going to affect the experience of this book when I tell you. So that book is The Book of Lost Hours by Haley Gilfuso, and it's such an interesting like sci-fi literary fiction take on how memories could be stored inside of the library, inside of the time space, and we get to see a young girl get thrown into the time space to be protected by her father, and then she grows up there until she's discovered there are different factions and governments that come in to the time space to destroy memories by burning the pages out of the books that the memories are contained in. They're all trying to get rid of different ideas and stuff throughout history to take it out of the consciousness of the world. So it's such an interesting concept. I think it kind of just broke my brain a little bit. So the concept was good, the writing was good. My experience of it was a 3.5. I feel like under different circumstances, this book could have gotten up to like a 4-star experience, but because of how I experienced it, it was a 3.5. So maybe you should read it when it comes out on August 12th and tell me if I scored it wrong, or if I should go back and read it again and see if I have a different experience the second time around. Now on to the library books. I read at the top of the month Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I was reading this at the same time as I was reading The Book of Lost Hours, and I was struggling against getting it in before my library due date. So again, like the experience of reading this book, I think affected the score a little bit. But it was fun to enter like an interesting magic system, the politics around people who have magic. This is a multiple points of view book. I think that it was very clear when you were in each point of view. They've been hired to do a heist, or one particular guy has been hired to do the heist, and he puts together a team to perform the heist. There are some people with magical abilities, and they're trying to receive something that's very valuable but potentially dangerous to the society at large once they can actually get this thing. And it was a good read. I am looking forward to reading the second one. I want to make sure that I am in a better frame of mind before I start reading the second one, because I had about a 4-star experience reading this book. I think it could have gotten up to like a 4.5, but overall, great book, good writing, interesting characters. You have like a morally, I wouldn't even say gray, just like person that's not good but you're still rooting for them situation going on. I almost wish that I had read Shadow and Bone before I started the series, because it takes place in the same universe. I would have had a better idea of the magic system at least before jumping into the political issues of this one. And I have no idea if Six of Crows is happening at the same time as Shadow and Bone, or if one is before the other. Like, I don't know about all of that, but I think I probably should have read Shadow and Bone first before this, but we're in too deep now. And finally, my 5-star experience this month, also a library book. Again, you should look into your local library. Just see how much it costs to get a library card. I love my library so much. So I got in a better headspace, and I really, really took my time reading The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I adored this. I have never really read a high fantasy like this book. This is slow. Okay, this is not going to zip through. I had to take many breaks to process what was just told to me. You're going through 4 different storytellers from across the world, and they're all weaving together, and they all have information on how to complete the task for the end of the book. So I would take a lot of breaks and just try to like puzzle together what I remember. And obviously, because it's so big, you don't exactly remember what was said, but you know it has something to do with what this character knows, and when are they going to meet up, when are they all going to connect again. There were so many time jumps in this, so if that is not something that you can be okay with, then maybe you would not have a 5-star experience of this. It was a little difficult to be like, wait, now it's 2 weeks later? Like, what is happening? When is this person doing this? Like, are they at the same time? How many months has it been? Because I have to like sail ships across a sea. So like, how long does that take? How far away are they? So if that is something that feels odd to you, or if you're not like super into the slower writing style, you're not gonna have a 5-star read with this. But I just had such a good time taking my time to read this book, to like take it in, to follow the characters, to put it down and take breaks. I don't think I read more than 144 pages in a sitting. I can read some books with like a lot easier, more modern language. I feel like I can get through like 350 on a good night. That was not this. I was not going to be getting this done as fast as I went through like the ACOTAR series. Like, I zipped through the 700-page books in that series in 3 days because the writing felt a lot more modern than the writing in this. This feels a lot more epic fantasy. I only use ACOTAR because that is the last like big chunky fantasy books that I read. They're totally different. So much fun. I was a little scared of picking up my first 800+ page book, but I just took my time and enjoyed the ride. I will be reading the prequel, just not yet. I'm gonna give myself a little time to process this one, and maybe I'll get that one later in the year or next year. And because of all that, I'm sure it's not too hard to assume that this is the book of the month for February, for sure. I loved Priory of the Orange Tree. I love the characters, and I'm looking forward to letting my brain steep in stories like this. For next month, I've got a couple books that I know for sure I'm going to be reading. I've got 2 on my Kindle. I have just started Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. And what a silly book. I'm having so much fun with it. It's just so... The writing is that like casual writing, but it works really well. I'm having a good time. About 67 pages in right now, so we've got a bit to go. I'm loving it. Also on my Kindle, I'm gonna read Crooked Kingdom by Lee Bardugo. I don't know for sure if I'm gonna read it next month, but it's up there on choices. But I do want to make sure that I am in that positive headspace. And another one I'm for sure reading next month though, because it is a library book, is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I guess I'm doing science fiction more or less this month between this and Dungeon Crawler Carl, so I'm looking forward to taking a little break from maybe this higher fantasy type realm and going into like more of a sci-fi space. So that's pretty exciting. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you're reading right now. How is it going for you? I can't wait to start sinking my teeth into some science fiction. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.